From the moment I could understand things, it was obvious. My older brother, Tommy, was the golden child, while I was just the afterthought. Nicole, make sure you're home by 3:30 to help your brother with his lunch, Mom would say nearly every morning before school. I was 12, he was 15, and apparently making his own sandwich was out of the question for our family's prodigy. But Mom, I want to join the art club after school, I'd plead, already knowing it was pointless. Your brother has football practice, she'd say with that final look, as if my voice barely registered. He needs proper nutrition, you know how important that is for him. Meanwhile, Tommy would be sprawled on the couch, tapping away on his latest iPhone, a birthday gift that made my hand-me-down flip phone feel like a relic. Yeah, Nikki, he'd smirk, not even glancing up. Be a good sister. Dad wasn't much different. Nicole, this is good practice for when you're a wife, he'd tell me, as though taking care of Tommy was the pinnacle of my aspirations. A woman needs to know how to take care of her family. Day after day, I'd rush home from school, throw together whatever Tommy wanted, iron his clothes for the next day, and try to cram in my homework. While I was buried in chores, Tommy would be off at one of his countless activities: football, debate club, computer programming. Mom and Dad made sure he had every opportunity they could dream up. The only person who seemed to truly see me was Grandma Rose. Her old Victorian house across town became my sanctuary. Whenever I could, I'd bike over there, racing through the tree-lined streets until her cozy wraparound porch came into view. There's my girl, she'd call from her garden, her silver hair glinting in the sunlight. In her house, there were no favorites, no golden children, just warmth, cookies, and love that didn't come with conditions. Her place was old and a little worn, with creaky floorboards and peeling wallpaper, but every imperfect inch felt like home, and the way Grandma treated us was what made it special. Whether it was Christmas, a birthday, or just a regular weekend, she made sure Tommy and I got the same treatment, the same thoughtful gifts, the same loving hugs. It drove Tommy absolutely crazy. One day, it all boiled over. It was Tommy's 16th birthday, and Grandma had gotten us both new tablets, identical high-quality ones. Tommy looked at his and exploded. Are you kidding me? He yelled, his face red with anger. Nicole gets the exact same thing as me on my birthday. Grandma sat calmly in her armchair, hands folded. Tommy dear, I love you both equally. That's not fair, he was practically shouting. Mom and Dad give me better stuff because they know I deserve it. I'm the one with the grades, the sports achievements, the future. Nicole just exists. I felt stunned, but Grandma didn't even flinch. She stood up, somehow towering over him. Thomas Michael Parker, she said, her voice calm, sharp as a knife. You will not speak about your sister that way in my house or anywhere else. Tommy stormed out, slamming the front door so hard that Grandma's china teacups rattled. I thought that was the end of it, but the next day, Grandma showed up at our house, unannounced. I listened from the top of the stairs as she confronted my parents. Her voice was low but firm. The way you're raising these children is unacceptable, she said. The favoritism needs to stop. Mom tried to argue, we're doing what's best for both of them. Grandma's voice was cold. Is that what you call it? Well, if you want my financial support for their upbringing, things need to change. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Later that night, I overheard my parents talking. We can't afford to lose her money, Mom whispered. We need it for Tommy's college fund. I know, Dad sighed. We'll have to play along, give Nicole some things too, keep her happy. Within a week, everything changed. I was finally enrolled in the piano lessons I'd begged for since I was 10. A new iPhone appeared on my nightstand, and my parents even started asking about my day. But it all felt hollow. The next time I saw Grandma, she was in her garden, tending to her roses. She looked at me with a knowing smile. You know, dear, she said, clippers in hand, I get detailed reports of how every penny of my support is spent. Your parents seem to be making much better choices lately, don't you think? It was a strange, bittersweet feeling, realizing that my parents' affection came with strings attached. They ask about my day, attend my school events, and buy me things, but I knew their hearts weren't in it. Their eyes still lit up in a different way when Tommy walked into the room. Eventually, I learned to accept it. At least now, I didn't have to spend every afternoon as Tommy's personal maid. When Tommy graduated high school and got into a university 3 hours away, it was like he'd won the Nobel Prize. Mom and Dad threw a huge party, inviting everyone they knew. Grandma Rose sat in the corner, watching with that knowing look in her eyes. For the first few months, family dinners were filled with tales of Tommy's college life, his professors, his bright future. Then one day, Dad came home waving an official-looking letter, his face purple with rage. Tommy was on academic probation, at risk of expulsion. All those study sessions he'd been boasting about had really been parties. Grandma Rose showed up the next day, angrier than I'd ever seen her. "If you don't get that boy in line," she told my parents, her voice like steel, "don't expect me to pay for another college when he gets himself kicked out." The threat of losing Grandma's support sent my parents into a panic. They drove to the university that weekend. Whatever they said must have shaken Tommy, because when he called home the next week, he sounded different, subdued. For once in his life, he had to face real consequences. By some miracle, he managed to pull his grades up enough to stay in school, and he eventually graduated. Meanwhile, I was accepted into the business management program at a nearby college. Grandma paid my tuition, though my parents barely seemed to notice. When I was in college, making the dean's list was celebrated with nothing more than a phone call from Grandma. 4 years flew by, and suddenly, it was graduation day. Grandma was there, beaming proudly. My parents showed up too, but they spent most of the ceremony talking about Tommy's new job. By then, I didn't care. I had my degree and, better yet, a job offer from Parker and Associates, one of the largest marketing firms in town. When Grandma Rose passed away, it felt like the world paused. At her funeral, I could have stopped staring at her garden, wondering who would care for her beloved roses now. A week later, we gathered in her attorney's office for the reading of her will. Tommy flew in from out of state, dressed in a pricey suit that made him look like a kid playing dress-up. Mom and Dad sat between us, as if they still needed to be referees after all these years. Mrs. Rose Parker's estate, the attorney began, is to be divided between her 2 grandchildren, Nicole and Thomas Parker. The division is to be decided by their own choice. One will receive the house and the other $500,000. The first choice goes to Thomas as the elder grandchild. Tommy actually laughed. "Is this a joke?" He looked around the room. "You really think I'd want that musty old house? I'll take the money. I've got big plans. I'm going to start my own business, show everyone what I can do. Nicole can have the house with all its weird smells and creaky floors." My heart raced. Grandma's house, my sanctuary all these years. "I'll take it," I said quietly but firmly. The next few years were a whirlwind of hard work and determination. I threw myself into my role at Parker and Associates, breaking sales records and eventually getting promoted to head of sales. Every salary increase went into renovating Grandma's house. I preserved its character while modernizing it, new wiring, new plumbing, and a state-of-the-art kitchen that still felt like it belonged in a Victorian home. I spent weekends learning everything I could about roses, keeping Grandma's garden alive. When the renovations were done, Mom and Dad visited. I watched as they walked through the restored rooms, their eyes wide at the crown molding, the gleaming hardwood floors, the gourmet kitchen. "This is incredible," Mom murmured, running her hand along the marble countertop. Dad nodded, then sighed. "It's a shame Tommy didn't take the house. This would have been perfect for him and his new wife." There it was. Some things never change. Speaking of which, Mom added with forced casualness, "Have you heard from your brother lately?" I hadn't. None of us had been invited to his wedding 6 months ago. He'd married in his wife's hometown, surrounded by her family and friends. Mom had shown me photos she found on Facebook, Tommy in a tux, his new wife Rebecca beaming in designer white. Then one Sunday afternoon, while I was pruning Grandma's roses, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I took my time wiping my hands before answering. When I opened the door, I nearly dropped my gardening gloves. Tommy stood there, looking nothing like the successful businessman he portrayed on social media. Beside him was Rebecca, eyeing my home as if conducting an inspection. Tommy gave me a strange smile. "Can we talk privately for a minute, Nikki?" We stepped into Grandma's old study, now my home office. Tommy closed the door, his face desperate. "I need your help, sis," he whispered. "The business, it's falling apart. We're about to lose everything. We had to give up our apartment." He ran a hand through his hair. "Could we stay here for a while? Just until things turn around?" I stared at him, stunned. Tommy had never asked me for anything, unless you counted all those years of entitled demands. But for the first time, I saw my brother, not my parents' golden child. "Okay," I heard myself say, "but only temporarily." The next morning, the doorbell rang again. This time it was Mom and Dad, practically bursting with excitement. We came as soon as Tommy told us. Mom rushed past me to hug Rebecca. "Oh, sweetheart, we're so happy to finally meet you in person." For the next 2 hours, I might as well have been invisible. I served coffee at Mom's request and listened as Rebecca charmed my parents with tales of her family connections and Tommy's brilliant business ventures. "Nicole," Mom called as I headed to the kitchen, "be a dear and make us some lunch, something nice." Rebecca's used to fine dining. That set the tone for the weeks that followed. I'd come home from long days at work to find Tommy and Rebecca lounging in my living room waiting for dinner. One evening, as I walked through the door, Rebecca glanced up from her phone. "Aren't you going to start cooking?" she asked, barely looking at me. "We're starving." I had just worked a 12-hour day. I dropped my briefcase and replied, "Why don't you cook something?" Rebecca's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. "Excuse me, you should be grateful we let you stay here at all. The least you could do is cook decent meals." I turned to Tommy, bewildered. He pulled me into the study, closing the door behind us. "Look," he whispered urgently, "Rebecca thinks this is my house, that I'm letting you stay here out of kindness. She comes from money, Nikki. She's used to a certain lifestyle. If she finds out I'm broke, she'll leave me." I stared at my brother, once so proud, now reduced to begging me to lie to his wife. "Fine," I finally said. "I won't tell her, but you two need to start treating me with respect in my own home. No more demands, no more attitude. Deal?" "Deal," Tommy said, relief washing over his face. True to his word, Tommy's demands for home-cooked meals stopped. Instead, I'd come home to find takeout containers from upscale restaurants scattered across my kitchen. Rebecca would lounge on the couch, picking at pad thai or sushi, barely acknowledging my presence. I didn't ask questions. I was just glad not to be playing chef after long days at the office. The arrangement worked for a while. They stayed out of my way, and I stayed out of theirs, until I got a call from Mom. "Nikki," she started, her tone sharp, "we need to discuss these restaurant bills. Tommy said you'd cover the expenses at the end of the month. It's almost $3,000. I nearly choked on my coffee. "Excuse me." "Well, you can't expect them to starve. Tommy told us you agreed to handle their food expenses while they're going through a rough patch. I've been putting it all on my credit card. I'll text you the account details for the transfer." Hands shaking, I hung up and texted Tommy, "Come to me, now." Within minutes, he was in my study, looking nervous. "Care to explain why Mom thinks I'm covering your luxury takeout habit?" I asked, my voice cold. Tommy's face flashed with guilt before he scrambled for excuses. "Nikki, you have to understand. Rebecca has certain expectations. If she knew how bad things were—" "Stop," I said, holding up a hand. "I've heard enough. This ends now." He looked desperate. "Just give me more time. Please, Nikki. I'll figure something out. I promise." I studied him, the brother who'd had everything handed to him his entire life. "Fine. One more chance. But figure out your own food situation. I'm not paying a cent." The next 2 months passed uneasily. I'd come home to find my house in disarray, my evenings spent cleaning up after them. Tommy and Rebecca lived in their bubble, taking lunch with their parents, shopping, and dining out as if nothing was wrong. Then, one evening, I came home early, looking forward to a quiet night with a glass of wine, only to find Rebecca waiting for me in the living room. "We need to talk," she announced, gesturing for me to sit. I raised an eyebrow but took a seat. Might as well hear whatever this was about. "I've been patient," Rebecca began, inspecting her manicured nails. "But enough is enough. From now on, you'll pay us $2,000 a month in rent. That's fair, considering the neighborhood. And you'll resume cooking and cleaning duties." I couldn't help it. I started laughing, loud and unrestrained. Rebecca's face darkened. "What's so funny?" "Rebecca, there's a misunderstanding here. This is my house. I own it. Your husband is staying here because I took pity on him." The color drained from her face. "You're lying?" "Call him," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Ask Tommy who owns this house." Hands trembling, she pulled out her phone and dialed. "Tommy," she snapped, "Nicole is telling some ridiculous story about owning this house. Tell her she's mistaken." There was a long pause, then Tommy's voice crackled through the speaker. "She's telling the truth. It's her house. Grandma left it to her. I took the money she offered me to start a business. But I failed. We're broke." Rebecca shot to her feet, knocking over a glass in her haste to get upstairs. I heard her slamming closet doors and throwing things around, packing in a fury. Within minutes, she was dragging her designer luggage down the stairs. She didn't look back as she left, the front door slamming shut like a gunshot. The next morning, Tommy stormed into the kitchen, his face twisted with rage. "This is all your fault. Rebecca's divorcing me, and she won't even talk to me. You had no right to tell her." I set down my coffee cup, calm and resolute. "No right? This is my house, Tommy, the one you laughed at me for choosing, the one you lied about to your wife while mooching off our parents. And you're telling me I had no right? You've always been jealous of me, haven't you?" he sneered, just waiting for a chance to get back at me. "Get out," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Take your things and go." He glared at me, then stumped upstairs, throwing things around in the guest room. When he finally left, he didn't say goodbye. I had exactly 1 hour of peace before my phone rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen. "How could you do this to your brother?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "He's devastated. He's back with us, crying his eyes out."